Chapter 36. Even through the screen, Fujio could feel how cold the man's expression was when he typed this sentence. He really couldn't turn off his phone. Turning it off would delay things. It was past 5 o'clock. The people on the top floor kept looking up at the time. Why isn't CEO Chin here yet? I think he waited for someone's WeChat for most of the night. Whose WeChat is so important? I don't know. While they were talking, the door was pulled open with a swoosh. Chin-mo walked in with his shirt half open, and his black hair was like an arrogant, ink-black night. He was so cold and cool that people instantly stopped talking. But his body was so good that many people started swallowing their saliva after taking a look. Coco came over and asked, "Captain, did you sleep here last night? Was the company too busy?" Chin-mo didn't answer him. Instead, he turned sideways and pressed the company phone on the desk. "Prepare a set of clothes for me and send them up immediately." "Yes." Secretary Liang was very efficient. Chin-mo took the shirt from his hands, his fingers fiddling with the sleeves, buttoning them up one by one. Then he said slowly, "Spadesy asked to meet me." "What?" Bang! Coco and Fatty stood up from their chairs at the same time. Meeting. The kind of meeting between online gamers. This was too unreal. Could it be a trap? This guy is very sly. Coco guessed. Fatty agreed. CEO Chin, let's bring more people. We can't let him escape this time. Do you think I wouldn't notice if it was a trap? Or? Chin-mo looked up casually, and his eyes were cold. Are you reminding me of the time I was tricked? Coco and Fatty froze at the same time, and their scalps went numb. No, sob, the CEO is so scary today. At the same time, the last class had started. Usually, at this time, no one was in the mood to study. Everyone was looking down at the time on their phones. Fujio was no exception. After all, she had an appointment. The English teacher knew that they couldn't listen anymore, so he thought of a few questions to lighten the mood. Then he called Fujio up. "What kind of girl do you like? What type of girl do you like?" Everyone in the class knew that Fujio was always the last in the exams. He couldn't understand English at all. Although some girls were interested in this question, they knew that Fujio couldn't answer it. Jiang Feiyang sat next to Fujio, looking like he was watching a good show. Tingting was anxious. She took out a pen and poked at Fujio's uniform from behind, writing one word on the paper, "Beautiful." As long as Fujio could answer with one word, she would pass. But she was afraid that Fujio didn't even know this word. The teacher was also looking at her. Fujio smiled. Her thin lips parted, and she spoke fluent English. "Do you think I don't have feelings just because I'm poor and ugly? If God had given me beauty and wealth, I would have made it as hard for you to leave me as it is now for me to leave you." Her voice had always been pleasant to listen to. Now that she was using an authentic British accent to slowly recite those sentences, it was full of exotic magnetism. Almost all the students in the class were intoxicated by it. This is. The English teacher was very excited. The original sentence from Jane Eyre. It seems like the teacher likes this book very much. The heroine in the book is my type. Fujio was still smiling, and she winked at Tingting behind her. So handsome and bewitching. Chapter 37. The English teacher took the lead in applauding and gave unprecedented affirmation, asking the students to learn from Fujio. Jiang Feiyang's eyes widened. He originally wanted to see a joke, but he didn't expect to see this little weakling in the limelight. Fujio sat down, glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, and curled up her thin lips. That obvious mockery made Jiang Feiyang feel like his face was about to be slapped swollen. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he actually thought that Fu Jiu looked good like that. Was he crazy? Alright, students, this class ends here. Class dismissed. With one sentence from the English teacher, the students flooded out of the classroom. Fu Jiu took her school bag and threw it behind her handsomely. She still had her skateboard under her arm, and she slowly walked into the crowd. Qin Xiaodong was already waiting at the teaching building. Young master, where are you going? Wait for me. Fu Jiu stopped in her tracks. Many girls looked at him with blushing faces, and they stopped as well. Qin Xiaodong paused for a moment. Did he see it wrong? Why do all these female students look so shy? Young master. Qin Xiaodong lowered his voice. What did you do this time? Did you hit on girls? Fu Jiu took out her phone and replied lazily, no. Alright, Qin Xiaodong said seriously. I trust you. Then, young master, where are we going now? Are we going to Computer City to buy parts? I don't know why, but young master seems to be very interested in these things recently. Fu Jiu opened WeChat and looked at the words, I'm here. She smiled. Before buying parts, let's go see someone first. Qin Xiaodong responded with an oh, completely unaware of the next critical attack. Who are you meeting? Qin Mo, Fu Jiu only gave him 2 words and walked away. Qin Xiaodong suddenly froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Even his expression was magnified to the extreme. Young master, wait, calm down. Young master Qin will treat you like a pervert and beat you into a bun. At the same time. At the gate of Jiang City No. 1 Middle School. A pure black Hummer with smooth lines was parked on the side of the road like a fierce tiger. The license plate number was white with red letters, and there were bodyguards standing around the car. His aura was shocking. But even so, it couldn't stop the enthusiasm of the students. It's Almighty Qin's car. Ah! I'm going crazy. Qin Mo was really popular, just like a superstar. As soon as he appeared, someone would pick up their phone to take pictures. No matter if it was a man or a woman, after seeing him play, no one would not love him. However, no matter how many people gathered outside, Qin Mo, on the Hummer, remained unmoved. He was sitting in the back seat. His nose bridge was straight, and his face was handsome. He looked like he was asleep. One of his hands was supporting his face lazily, and the other was resting on his long legs. His long and narrow eyes were slightly closed, and he looked very careless. But when his WeChat beeped, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as evil as the night, as though he could see through everything in this world. Qin Mo unlocked his phone, a line of words appearing on the screen. I'm heading that way now. Coco, who was sitting in the passenger seat, also heard the sound, and for some reason, he became excited. I've been playing games for so long, but this is the first time I've met an in-game character. What does Spade Z look like? It couldn't be a burly man, right? Chapter 38. Fatty was also very excited, and his fingers tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of high school student could be this good? I really want to PK his hacking skills in person. Coco bit the rabbit's ear. Then I want to play games with him. Don't do that, it will make us look weak. Fatty patted him on the shoulder. Bring out your online celebrity aura. Isn't it just a gay meetup? Coco snorted. You sound like you're calm, but your hands are still shaking. It seemed that CEO was calmer. The two looked at each other, and they couldn't help but look at the rearview mirror at the same time. CEO, Captain, should also be seeing someone in the game for the first time, right? Who would have thought that the cold CEO would actually agree to a gay meetup? But if that guy was Spade Z, then it wouldn't be strange at all, since the Hummer didn't leave, the school gate was already surrounded by students. This was the scene that Fujio saw when she came out. Everyone was tiptoeing and looking in the same direction, and their excitement was all expressed on their faces. Some girls couldn't help but cover their mouths the moment Chin-mo opened the window. Chin-mo looked out the window, and his dark eyes scanned the crowd inch by inch. Spade Z would come out in a moment. As soon as he thought of this, his usually indifferent thin lips revealed a playful expression that he had never shown before. Paw! He tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His arm was casually resting on the outside of the car, and his fingers were playing with the limited edition Zippo lighter. His black hair was a little messy due to the breeze, and his godlike handsome side profile was enough to make people scream. Ah! Young Master Chin. Young Master Chin. Qin Xiaodong, who was behind Fujio, was stunned again. He didn't expect that young Master Chin would appear in front of them right after he said he wanted to see young Master Chin. It was like God was torturing him. He had to hold young Master back and not let him do anything stupid. Fujio looked at Qin Xiaodong, who was standing in front of her, and raised her eyebrows. Young Master. Qin Xiaodong tried to persuade him. Look, there are so many people here. It's not a good time to go. Besides, young Master Chin rarely shows up at school, so he must be waiting for someone. Let's not join in the fun, okay? What if he was expelled from school again? Madam must be very sad. Fujio laughed. You know he is waiting for someone, but do you know who he is waiting for? Ah. Who? Qin Xiaodong was at a loss. Fujio's voice was deep. Young Master, to be honest, you can't be so whimsical. This time, Fujio didn't wait for him to finish. She shot him a sharp look. Then, he reached out and pushed away Qin Xiaodong, who was shivering from head to toe. He put on his headphones, clamped his skateboard, and strode toward the black Hummer surrounded by the crowd. That head of silver hair, under the dim yellow light, was exceptionally dazzling. Wait, that's Fujio. Could it be that he still hasn't given up on young Master Chin? No. I just fell in love with him. Let's make a bet. If young Master Chin sees him, he'll definitely tell him to scram. Chapter 39. It was as if she couldn't hear the discussions around her. Fujio walked straight to the front of the Hummer. Even the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. The bodyguard immediately reached out and blocked her way. Last time, it was this young man who suddenly appeared and threw himself into the CEO's arms. This time, he appeared again. Was he treating them like decorations? Facing such a block, Fujio didn't show any fear. Instead, she raised her eyebrows, and there was a playful smile on her lips. Qin Xiaodong, who was in the crowd, let out a sigh of relief. It was good that young Master Chin's bodyguard was here. He wouldn't let young Master pass, so he didn't have to worry about young Master Chin. Ah. Coco, who was sitting in the car, also recognized Fujio. It's him. Fatty was busy with the computer last time, so he didn't know what was going on. Who is he? I think he's the gay who has a crush on Captain. Coco said this and found Chin-mo looking at him, so he immediately changed his words. No, I mean he's a crazy fan. Yes, very crazy, and his way of expressing his love is a bit special. Hearing this, Fatty looked quite disappointed. Oh, then he can't be Spade Z. Fujio saw that the other party didn't have any intention of opening the door, and Chin-mo seemed to be looking down at his phone. She opened WeChat and sent a message. Almighty Chin, tell your bodyguard to move. Chin-mo suddenly paused and raised his head subconsciously. His eyes met the familiar figure outside the car through the bodyguard. Under the dusk, that person was holding a skateboard in his left hand and a phone in his right. His school uniform was unzipped, and he was wearing a beige t-shirt. His eyes were black and white, and they were hazy. The light shone down on his silver-haired eyes, and for some reason, there was a hint of seductiveness in them. Chin-mo's pupils shook violently. Then, his deep eyes narrowed dangerously. Fujio saw that he saw her, so she shook her phone lazily. Chin-mo didn't let Fujio get in the car immediately. He flicked the cigarette but with his slender fingers, lowered his eyes, and sent a message. "The one outside, is that you?" After Fujio saw the message, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. So the people in Almighty Chin's family are counted as one. This time, Chin-mo saw Fujio reply to his WeChat with his own eyes. At this moment, there was a faint cold light in his eyes. "Get out of the way, let him come over." "What?" Coco was so shocked that he bit off the rabbit's ear. The bodyguards looked at each other and froze in place. Even Chin Xiaodong's eyes widened in disbelief. He actually let the young master pass. The surrounding students covered their mouths in disbelief. Fujio raised her hand and patted their shoulders. "I told you that your CEO was waiting for me. Why don't you believe me?" The bodyguards immediately turned around. They wanted to prove it to their boss. They didn't believe it was true. "Let him come here." Chin-mo repeated his words in an indifferent tone. Coco turned around in surprise. "Captain, don't be like this. Even if that person hugged you before, you can't just beat him up because you want to, especially in public." Chapter 40. Chin-mo frowned as he watched Fujio's face, which looked like it had been kissed by God, get closer and closer to him. She smelled so good, with the smell of candy. The young man's light pink lips, which were perfect for kissing, were right in front of him with a teasing smile. In the face of such seduction, only Chin-mo could remain noble. His eyes curved into a smile, and his eyes were full of warning. "Don't get so close to me when you talk. Get in." Fujio was a little surprised, thinking that he would blush or something. So boring. Almighty Chin was indeed not easy to deal with. But it was only interesting when there was a challenge. She would try breathing into his ear next time. Let's see if he would always be so indifferent. Fujio found something interesting to do. Coco and Fatty, on the other hand, widened their eyes as they listened. What did they just hear? Captain actually said to let this gay get in the car. Fujio knew what these two were thinking. As soon as she sat down, she curled up the corner of her mouth. "Hello, let me reintroduce myself. I am Spade Z, Fujio." It would have been better if she hadn't said that. As soon as she said that, Fatty almost skidded on the steering wheel. Spade Z. Not only him, but even Coco's face also cracked in an instant. No wonder Captain paused for a second. Who would have thought that a gay nouveau riche would be that cool Spade Z? The setting shouldn't be like this. One had to know that among the students interviewed, the first person they eliminated was this gay. Was this a joke? Or was he still dreaming? Or was this gay pretending to be him? No, he couldn't be pretending. Because he saw Captain talking to this guy on WeChat. But this was too unreal. I imagined Spade Z to be a burly man, Coco said listlessly. Fujio raised her eyebrows and smiled wickedly. I'm really sorry that I didn't grow up to be what you imagined, so I can't overpower you. Coco, Captain. Now I believe that this guy is Spade Z. Coco clenched his fists. Can I beat him up? Spadesy was asking for a beating the moment he opened his mouth. This was definitely Spadesy's style. He recalled the first time he saw this guy in the game. He was so cocky that he didn't even add him as a friend. Other than the captain, no one else had his contact information. Fujio smiled. You want to fight? Sure, but I'm afraid you'll cry after the fight. Coco's face turned red from being teased, but he couldn't argue with Fujio. He could only look at Chinemo and blurt out, Captain, you were the one who recruited him. You should control him. Fujio was stunned by his words. Why did she let Almighty Chin control her? Are they close? They had only seen each other a few times. Didn't they just exchange WeChat messages? But Chinemo turned to look at her without warning. That well-ironed suit and noble side profile were very much in line with his identity as a CEO. He indeed had the disposition to manage people. Then he put down the esports magazine in his hand and said to himself in a calm tone, Don't bully children. Hearing that his captain was standing up for him, Coco immediately raised his chin like a cat. But on second thought, wait a minute. Children. The corner of Coco's mouth twitched, and he felt wronged. Captain, are you really helping me? Aren't you bullying me with Spadesy? This is only your first gay meetup, and you're already so biased. Fortunately, Spadesy wasn't a girl. Chapter 41. Fujio thought Chinemo was right and was about to praise him. But before she could speak, Almighty Chin spoke again, slowly bringing up the dark history she didn't want to face the most. Also, I don't like men, especially not being kept by men. Fujio, such a sharp-tongued man, was not worthy of praise at all. Coco laughed this time and felt curious. He asked Fujio with the rabbit in his arms, How did you become Spadesy? When our captain added you, you were dismissive. Don't you like our captain the most? Hearing that, Fujio let out a long sigh. People are always young and frivolous. Are you saying that you don't like President Chin anymore? Fatty turned around. Chinmo's fingers froze. Coco's eyes turned cold as he looked at his captain. He pulled Fatty back. What the hell are you talking about? Chinemo saw that the car was quiet, and he glanced at Fujio indifferently. His deep voice carried an irresistible coldness. Drive. Yes. Fatty didn't dare to say anything else. He quickly sat up straight, stepped on the accelerator, and drove to the main road on the left. The students outside the Hummer were all dumbfounded. Especially Qin Xiaodong, whose face was filled with astonishment. When did their young master and young Master Qin become so close? Young Master Qin didn't beat him up and even took him away. Was he going to bring him home to teach him a lesson? This was not impossible. Qin Xiaodong shuddered at the thought of that scene. What to do? Should he inform Madam? No, he should call the young master first and ask him what was going on. Fujio's phone rang as soon as the Hummer made a turn. She picked it up casually, as if she didn't care who was sitting next to her. Hey! Young master, it's me. Qin Xiaodong hurriedly said, Where is young Master Qin taking you? Is there any danger? Fujio listened to the conversation and raised her eyebrows. She looked sideways and asked the man next to her, Where are we going? I'll take you to dinner. Qin Mo closed the magazine, his voice still calm. Don't people in the game have a meal when they first meet? That's right. But I really didn't expect you to be like this. To be honest, after Almighty Qin heard that she wanted to meet him yesterday, did he look up a lot of procedures? Fujio paused and said to the phone, He's taking me to dinner. What do you want to eat? When Qin Xiaodong heard the answer, he became even more anxious. Do you want to eat dumplings? Chop you up and make you into dumplings. Young master, don't be afraid. I'll go and save you now. Fujio, no, I didn't sleep with him. Why would he kill me? Don't think about these useless things all day. Fujio corrected him lazily. She didn't care at all. We are just having a friendly meal together. Chen Xiaodong glared. Young master, you still haven't given up on sleeping with young master Qin. If he finds out, he'll kill you. His voice was slightly loud. Especially in a fully enclosed car, the sound was amplified several times. The fatty sitting in front obviously heard it. His hand slipped and he almost hit the car on the left. Coco didn't move and just stood there with Fatty. He wanted to turn around but didn't dare. Chapter 42. The air around the Hummer froze, not moving at all. Fujio could clearly feel the changes around her, especially the cold aura coming from her left side. He already knows. Fujio said helplessly and hung up. She looked at Qin Mo evilly. Would you believe me if I said it was a misunderstanding? Qin Mo looked at her, his gaze cold. What do you think? This is really a misunderstanding. In order to be more convincing, Fujio emphasized the last sentence. You are so hard to sleep. Qin Mo laughed. His thin lips were cold, and he ground his teeth hard. I'm sorry, it's so hard to push me down. Should I lie flat and let you do whatever you want? If you want, that's fine too. Fujio's tone indicated that she was really considering it. As soon as he finished speaking, Fatty's feet twitched, and his speed increased by several notches. Coco was trying to shrink into nothing. Qin Mo suddenly reached out his hand and pinched the face that made his teeth itch with hatred. He said in a deep voice, Fujio. Fujio raised her eyebrows, raised her head, and looked at him in confusion. Her eyes were as beautiful as his cat's. It was mainly the fluffy silver-gray hair that gave Qin Mo an illusion. If you still want to eat, then talk less. Qin Mo let go of his face. His fingertips could still feel the smooth touch. His eyes couldn't help but look out of the window. There wasn't any warmth in his voice. Qin Mo told himself that since he was Spade Z, he wouldn't throw this kid out of the car window who liked to generate electricity randomly. The place they ate at was a star-rated hotel, the most expensive place in Rivertown. The lights were dazzling and the decorations were luxurious. Hundreds of goblets of red wine hung from the ceiling. Even the waiter was dressed in a white shirt and black pants. He was very well-mannered. Seeing Qin Mo's car drive in, someone immediately went up to welcome him. However, that person was not a waiter, but the hotel lobby manager. President Qin, I've cleaned up the greenhouse on the top floor. Today's Australian lobsters are all fresh, and there's also Arctic shellfish. When Qin Mo heard the manager's words, he nodded and said, tell him what he wants to eat. The lobby manager paused and looked at Fujio hesitantly. It would have been fine if he hadn't seen it, but the moment he did, his heart nearly jumped out of his chest. Wasn't this the prodigal son of the Fu family? Every time he came to their hotel, he would always order a lot of things to show off his wealth and ask them to open a bottle of wine. In fact, he didn't even have that much money in his pocket. He was simply a nouveau riche that no one liked. Why was the CEO with him? He even wanted him to ask for the other party's opinion before ordering. Fujio knew what the manager was thinking just by looking at his face. After all, she was no stranger to this place. In the past, she often came here to eat. Presumably, the lobby manager also had a deep impression of her, and because of that pair of siblings, she became a refused customer. Lobster then. Fujio curled her lips into a smile, and her eyes emitted a faint light. Sure enough, he still liked expensive things. The lobby manager silently noted it down. Qin Mo, who was walking in front, tilted his head over, his voice faint. Do you like lobsters? Fujio nodded with the lollipop in her mouth. She didn't deny it. Chinemo nodded and said to the people behind him, order 10 and give them all to him. Chapter 43. Yes. The manager found it very difficult to say this. Although he was surprised, he was good at reading people's expressions. When he raised his head again, his face was full of smiles. Young Master Fu, what else would you like to eat? I'll ask them to serve it to you. Young Master Fu. Fujio paused and paused. I don't like the title of Young Master Fu, it's easy to be mistaken. The other Young Master Fu comes here often, doesn't he? The manager actually wanted to say that he couldn't be mistaken. That person was obviously very elegant and was also an excellent student. Anyone could tell that. But the CEO was here, so he couldn't say anything. He could only say hesitantly, then, call me Lord Joe from now on. Fujio pulled out her lollipop with a skateboard under her arm and smiled domineeringly. The manager's smile froze. What? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Manager Lee, you don't want to. The manager glanced at his CEO's face. Chinmo's eyes turned cold. Fujio. Fujio looked up and blinked her left eye at Almighty Chin, who was very close to her. She looked very innocent, but she couldn't hide her hostility. Don't be too arrogant. Chinemo turned sideways and pressed her head with one hand. He lowered his voice, and his irresistible breath landed on Fujio's left ear. He said in a magnetic and domineering voice, "This is my territory." Fujio's heart sank. That's right, that's right. The manager raised his head and was about to snort. But his CEO turned his gaze over again, and his eyes were cold. Manager Lee, you can call him whatever he wants you to call him. Don't make me teach you how to treat customers. This was completely different from what he expected. Shouldn't the CEO just tell that nouveau riche to get lost? Why was he supporting him? The manager froze again. Then. Chinemo lifted his eyelids, put his left hand into his pocket, and said arrogantly, "Call for someone." The manager trembled and immediately lowered his head. Lord Joe. Go and serve the lobster. Fujio nodded at him. The manager cursed in his heart. A dog relying on its master's power. Fujio looked at his unwilling back, and the corner of her mouth curled up coldly. This time, Chinemo lost his patience and pulled her over. According to Almighty Chin's style, he never liked physical contact with people. So, he was tugging at Fujio's school uniform. Just like that, Almighty Chin dragged Fujio to the top floor like a cart. Both Coco and Fatty felt that Spade Z was able to survive until now because of his gaming skills. Otherwise, the CEO wouldn't have dragged him to the top floor, but directly thrown him out of the hotel. But even so, the CEO was very tolerant of this kid. She even touched his head just now. This was something that had never happened before. Fujio didn't mind being dragged around by Almighty Chin. She had a great time today anyway. However, I can't finish so many lobsters. Fujio looked at the table full of Australian lobsters and felt a little melancholy. Chinemo tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his expression indifferent. If you can't finish it, bring it back. You can take it away. She didn't expect Almighty Chin to be so considerate. Fujio just erased the image of an inhuman tyrant from her mind. Then she heard Chinemo say, "Go catch 2 live ones for young Master Joe. Let him finish all of them." Fujio. Chapter 44. No one dared to disobey Chin Mo's words. Not just in the hotel owned by the Chin Group, but in the entire Jiang city, whatever he said, there would be people who would do it immediately. Soon, the waiter brought in 2 lobsters in bamboo cages. Each lobster was huge, and the pincers were still moving. Fu Jiu watched from the side, and she suddenly felt that the rest of the lobsters were even harder to swallow. This man was doing this on purpose. Couldn't they have a happy gay meetup? CEO Chin. The waiter raised the bamboo cages respectfully so that their CEO could see the quality of the lobsters better. Chin Mo still had a cigarette between his slender fingers, and he glanced over there indifferently. Give it to your Lord Joe. Your Lord Joe. Fu Jiu held a big pincer in her mouth and took a big bite. Chin Mo looked at the young man's slightly depressed face. Under the shocked gazes of others, he reached out his hand and touched that fluffy head. With a faint smile, there was a deep sense of oppression. Eat slowly. If it's not enough, you can ask for more. Hearing that, Fu Jiu wiped the corner of her mouth decisively and smiled wickedly. I want to go pee first. Chin Mo took his hand back. His eyes were deep and beautiful. He looked at Fu Jiu for a few seconds before curling up his thin lips. We won't touch the lobsters, so you can keep them. Go. He didn't even give her a chance to pee. Fu Jiu narrowed her eyes. This man was really vengeful. But it was okay. She was eating his money anyway. She didn't know how to cook lobsters, but she could eat them. When she had an empty stomach, she could fight again. Fu Jiu loosened her fingers handsomely, stood up, and walked out of the greenhouse on the top floor lazily. But she didn't know what Coco and Fatty's expressions were like behind her. The second time. Today was the second time that their CEO touched this guy's head. The two turned their heads at the same time, looking like they wanted to say something but didn't. Of course, Chin Mo knew that they were looking at him. He reached out and flicked the cigarette butt, saying one word lightly. Captain, why are you so nice to this Spade Z? You didn't even treat me and Fatty this well. Coco finally said everything he wanted to say today. Chin Mo took the wet towel from the waiter and wiped his hands. You can eat if you want. Just watch the 2 live ones and start from 10. Coco paused, because he thought about the scene carefully, and when he looked back, he realized that it was really scary. It seemed that the captain's gentle concern wasn't a good thing after all. But, it was still a little strange. Captain had never touched anyone's head before. Not to mention touching her head, even that kind of smile just now was rare. Just as Coco was racking his brains, Fatty saw his CEO stand up for some reason. He hurriedly swallowed the beef in his mouth and asked, CEO Chin, where are you going? You guys continue eating. I'm going to take a look at that guy who's trying to escape. Chin Mo casually turned his side profile. His black hair fell down, revealing only a pair of bottomless eyes, which were as bright as an eagle in the sky. When he said this, his eyes were as cold as crushed ice. It was fine that he escaped once, but how could he let him escape again in front of him? The hotel's bathroom was built at the corner of every floor. It was made of high-quality incense, and the exterior decoration was basically the same as the hotel's, very luxurious. But Chapter 45. If she went to the women's restroom, she would be treated as a hooligan. If she went to the men's restroom, the men's restroom wasn't sealed. Unless she squatted, Fu Jiu tucked her bangs behind her head and furrowed her pretty eyebrows. I've decided, I'll go to whichever restroom is empty. To make herself look less wretched, Fu Jiu put a smile on her face and put one hand in her pocket. She stood at the door handsomely. A girl just came out of the restroom. She looked up and saw a handsome young man. She blushed immediately. This guy. How could he be so handsome? But it was strange. Why was he standing here? The girl looked at Fujio in confusion. Fujio curled up her lips and pointed at the sink naturally. The faucet seems to be broken. I can't get any water out. Oh. Let me see. The girl lowered her head shyly. What should I do? I'm being hit on by this handsome young man. Should she act more reserved, or more bold? The girl suppressed her excitement and reached out her hand. She said in a small voice, "It's not broken. Everything here is sensitive. You can put your hand in, and the water will come out." Oh, I see. Fujio looked like she suddenly realized something. She turned her face to the side and smiled at the girl. Thank you. No, you're welcome. His skin was even better up close, and his eyelashes were unbelievably long. How could there be such a good-looking person? The girl felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. She was about to ask for his WeChat number. Suddenly, a fair and slender hand reached out and placed itself between the two of them, grabbing onto the back of the pretty boy's collar. The girl was stunned. What was going on? Fujio was stunned as well. She looked up subconsciously at the person who grabbed her. It was a figure standing with his back to the light. It was Chin-emo. He was wearing a black suit jacket, and his shirt collar was half unbuttoned. That extremely handsome, mixed-race face exuded a noble and extraordinary aura. He was reserved and low-key, but there was a hint of danger in him. Now, he was grabbing her with one hand, and his other hand was casually in his pocket. He was staring at her with deep eyes. Fujio smiled calmly. Almighty Chin, what a coincidence. You're here to use the restroom too. Could it be that they're here to watch you flirt with girls? Chin-emo asked slowly. He had heard a few words just now and his lips turned cold. The faucet is broken. I can't believe you came up with such a lame pickup line excuse. This brat was simply exuding electricity all the time. Going to the toilet was the same. Did he like to tease people that much? It can't be helped. There's only a water tap here. Fujio wasn't embarrassed at all. She looked at the girl who was shocked by the scene and blinked her left eye. Her peach blossom eyes were very beautiful. The girl covered her mouth and looked at the two of them excitedly. Almighty Chin. Fujio tapped her thin lips with her fingertip and made an evil sound. Almighty Chin, so she's your fan, this time. Before Fujio could finish, Chin-emo grabbed the back of his collar with force and dragged him into the men's washroom with an indifferent expression like he was carrying a kitten. Chapter 46. In the men's room, Chin-emo loosened his grip on her collar. What were you doing standing there like a fool? Huh? Fujio raised her eyebrows and denied it with a charming smile. When did I stand there like a fool? Wasn't I hitting on girls? Chin-emo snorted and stood to the side. He didn't wear a tie, and he even unbuttoned 2 buttons. He glanced at her and said in a low voice, "Didn't you say you were going to pee? Why don't you come over?" Go over. Fujio looked at the semi-concave urinal. How could she go over? She looked like a pretty boy, but she was still a girl. Even if she wanted to pee, she didn't need a urinal like this. Maybe it was because too much time had passed. Chin-emo also sensed something. He suddenly walked over to Fujio, lowered his head, and stared at her with sparkling eyes. His voice was very calm. I checked that gay meetups require us to drink and eat together. It seemed that Almighty Chin was seriously inviting her to pee with him. Gay meetups were really troublesome. But, how could she pee? She couldn't take out that thing. Fujio tilted her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she looked up, pressed the man's chest, and pushed him against the wall. She raised her left hand and placed it on the pale white wall behind Chin Mo. That posture was as cool as flowing water. Then, she leaned over and breathed into Chin Mo's ear. In fact, during a gay meetup, you can even take off your partner's pants. Almighty Chin, do you want to try? Chin Mo's body stiffened at first, and when he realized what she said, his handsome face instantly turned frighteningly cold. He looked at the person in front of him and called out his name word by word, Fu Jiu. Ha! Fu Jiu was still smiling, and her right hand was about to help him unbutton his pants. Don't be shy, we're all men, so we have to go through this process. If we don't compare the size of that thing, how will we know who's better, right? Chin Mo couldn't take it anymore. He reached out and grabbed the wrist that made him clench his teeth. He pursed his lips tightly and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Do you want to die? No, I'm just expressing my friendliness. Almighty Chin treated me to so many lobsters, so of course I have to return the favor. We're all brothers, so don't be so formal. Fu Jiu was still blinking. She leaned over and got closer to him. That beautiful silhouette became clearer and clearer. Her skin was so fair and tender that even the fine hair could be seen. Her body temperature was so close that it was killing her. Chin Mo looked at him viciously. He couldn't suppress the urge to strangle him. Swoosh! With a backhand, she pinned him to the wall and said in an extremely cold voice, "If you touch me again, I'll tear off your claws." Fu Jiu didn't mind being pressed down by him. She turned around and smiled brightly at him. Almighty Chin is so pure. Don't tell me you're still a virgin. That lazy look and silver hair really did look like his cat. They both didn't know what was good for them. Chin Mo took a deep breath, reached out his hand, and pinched the young man's chin. Every word he said was vicious. Be good, don't force me to kill you. Do you understand? Fu Jiu coaxed in a low voice. Don't be angry. We're good friends. Chin Mo sneered, pushed him away, and fixed his messy collar. Don't use your flirting tone to flirt with me. Pee yourself and get back here. Chapter 47. Coco and Fatty, who were sitting in the top-floor greenhouse, didn't know what happened in the washroom. The two of them were still eating, and as they ate, they felt that CEO Chin had been in the washroom for too long. Fatty frowned and asked, "Did something happen?" Coco didn't care at all. What could happen? That guy only thinks about sleeping with Captain all day. Co. Fatty put down the knife and fork in his hand and pursed his lips forcefully behind him. The sensitive Coco immediately sensed the unusual coldness behind him. He raised his voice and changed his words quickly. He doesn't think that he can sleep with Captain whenever he wants. Our Captain likes girls, unlike him who's gay. Phew, luckily he didn't say the last sentence. If he continues like this, I'm worried that Captain will be turned gay by him. It was really thrilling, really thrilling. Coco reached out his hand and wiped his sweat. Chin Mo's expression didn't warm up after he changed his words. On the contrary, the atmosphere in the private room seemed to freeze after he came in. It was unbelievably cold. Coco felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar. That coldness that made people shiver from the bottom of their hearts was indeed coming from CEO Chin. He turned his head and gave Fatty a look. Why did Captain's eyes become like this after one trip to the washroom? I feel like he wants to kill someone. Fatty shook his head. How would I know? Shut up. Be careful that CEO Chin has his eyes on you. Just as the two of them instinctively shrunk back, they heard their CEO's sinister and black-bellied voice ring out above their heads again. Give him 10 more lobsters, bigger ones. Not to mention Fatty and Coco, even the waiter standing next to them had a more look on his face. But they had to do whatever CEO Chin said. Even though this whole thing was very strange and not like CEO Chin's usual style. After all, it was quite uncomfortable to eat all those lobsters in one stomach. After the waiter left, Fatty thought for a while and said, CEO Chin, do you really think that Fujio is Spade Z? Why do I feel like he's a bit weird? He's bent. That's how the bent world is. After Coco spoke up for Fujio, he added, but he seems to be completely different from the prodigal son of the Fu family that I remember. Wasn't he quite an introvert in the past? Ah. Fatty was a shut-in and didn't know. Coco counted on his fingers. Infatuated, flaunting his wealth, no taste, just a typical nouveau riche. But he hasn't harmed anyone, it's just that attitude that makes people dislike him. Plus, he was gay, so he was ostracized. But he's also gay now, and he wants to sleep. When Fatty said the word sleep, he suddenly paused. Chin Mo played with the silver lighter between his fingers, raising his eyebrows with a cold smile. What else does he want to sleep? Why aren't you continuing? Sleep, sleep, sleep. Fatty really couldn't find an excuse. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Sleep with me, okay? You. Chin Mo turned the plane, and his fingers paused. Then, his voice became even colder, like an unsheathed ice, full of lethality. He can't sleep. His looks aren't up to par. Chapter 48. In order to save Fatty, Coco asked, Captain, should we try that Fujio? There's no need to try. Chin Mo tilted his head and said lightly, without any emotion in his voice. It's him. There was no other person who had this trait that made him want to strangle him to death just by looking at him. Fatty frowned. I really don't understand why Spade Z suddenly asked to meet him. Could it be that he was playing games to get closer to the CEO? Is that why he wants to meet him? After he finished speaking, Fatty deliberately looked at his CEO. Phew, fortunately, his CEO was rational and didn't seem to reject his idea. However, Coco seemed to have thought of something and suddenly sat up straight. No, it's not to get closer to the captain. If it was such a simple reason, he wouldn't have rejected the captain when he added him. Isn't our team recruiting new people recently? Many companies want to send people to the corporation, but there seems to be a problem with Madame Fu's side. All the players have been poached, and now she can't even submit the most basic list. If this continues, her company will definitely go bankrupt. You're saying that Spade Z wants to meet the CEO because of this? Fatty said and glanced at Chin Mo again. But this time, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but the CEO's lighter in his hand actually paused for a moment. However, Chin Mo didn't say anything. He lifted his jade-like fingers and took the wine glass from the table. He swirled it back and forth twice. His deep eyes were a little cold. So the reason he wanted to see him was because of this. After Fujio finished filling the tub, she found that there were 10 more crayfish in front of her seat. In fact, the table they were eating at wasn't small. It was the kind of luxurious presidential table that could seat 12 people. Now the entire table was filled with crayfish. Almighty Chin and the others' food only took up a little bit of space. Was he trying to make her die from overeating? Fujio looked up at Chin Mo, feeling very melancholy. Why didn't the strategy guide teach the Almighty that he should be reserved and tolerant when meeting a game friend for the first time? Even if you're rich, you shouldn't waste it like this. This isn't a crayfish that costs 10 renminbi. This is an Australian crayfish. When the man saw the silver-haired young man grumble gloomily as if he was complaining about something, he chuckled softly. Then, he took out a cigarette and bit it between his thin lips. He tilted his head and lit it. Then, he raised his chin. It's all yours. Eat it. Okay. Fujio also smiled. It was a little evil. So what if he ate? He wasn't the one paying anyway. However, why did Almighty Chin look even colder than before? She didn't really take off his pants, so he didn't have to sneer at her, right? Could it be that something had happened while she was gone? Fujio pondered for a while but couldn't figure out anything. She ate a lot of lobsters and was very full, but she was still satisfied. As long as she could meet him once, she wouldn't have to disguise herself when she participated in the competition. She wouldn't have to worry about Chin Mo checking on her at all times. To be honest, this was the first time she had encountered such a difficult opponent. He even deduced that she liked to eat lollipops. If he continued to investigate, who knew what he might find out? Right now, she couldn't afford to be investigated by Chin Mo. Chapter 49. After eating the last pincer, Fujio felt it was time to leave. She was about to say goodbye to Almighty Chin. Thank you for the lobster, see you next time. But she heard Chin Mo ask with a faint smile, done eating? Yeah, I'm done. Fujio nodded. She was in a good mood. Not bad, Almighty Chin had learned how to make small talk with people. It turned out that the gay meetup strategy was useful. Chin Mo chuckled. A cold glint flashed across his eyes when he saw how lazy he was. He lifted his finger. The waiter immediately handed over the menu with both hands. Chin Mo glanced at the waiter. Go get the bill. The waiter was confused. Didn't the CEO need to pay for meals? Coco and Fatty didn't understand what was going on either. But they heard their CEO say calmly, give it to your Lord Joe. He's treating us today. Coco, Fatty, Fujio, even the waiter, Fujio's reaction was the most direct. Her eyes, which were about to flirt with Chin Mo, twitched. When did this meal become her treat? And wasn't this hotel owned by Chin? Almighty, I remember this is your family's business. Are you sure you want me to treat you? Where's your demeanor? Fujio raised her eyebrows. Coco and Fatty were a little embarrassed by their conversation. After all, their CEO had never asked anyone to treat them, not to mention at his own hotel. The waiters standing at the side also looked at each other and didn't move forward. Chin Mo looked at Fujio's beautiful peach blossom eyes and said faintly, I only treat people like this when I'm close to them. Fujio, this man was doing it on purpose. He was using her words to shut her up. She had only breathed into his ear. How could he treat her like this? She only had 5,000 yuan on her, and it was earned from playing games. At most, she could pay for 5 lobsters. How did the gay meetup course teach people? Almighty Chin, if you keep being so vengeful, you won't be able to get a girlfriend, let alone a good friend. What? You don't want to treat me? Chin Mo raised the teacup in his hand. He didn't drink it. Through the mist, his eyes shone. Didn't you say we have a good relationship? Fujio leaned back and said straightforwardly, it's not that I don't want to, but I don't have the money. You don't have money. Coco's tone was a little high as if he didn't believe it at all. How is that possible? Fujio laughed. Why not? Someone thought I was embarrassing and was afraid of offending young Master Chin, so he removed my name from the Fu family. You should know about this. Coco did know about it. After all, his family had some business dealings with the Fu family. This matter caused quite a stir. His dad also said that no matter how bad Fujio was, his old man shouldn't have treated the one he was raising outside as his own. He even cut off Fujio and his mother's financial support. That third was even worse. He took the opportunity to poach people. He was basically forcing He Honghua to her death. For a moment, Coco didn't know what to say. He turned his head and looked at his CEO. But before Chin Mo could speak. Chapter 50. In an instant. The temperature in the room dropped by several degrees. The waiters stood on the side, their fingers frozen, and their eyes were filled with unspeakable shock. Someone actually dared to make such a gesture in front of their CEO. And, what did he say? Using his body. It couldn't be what they thought it was. But looking at that young Master Fu's posture, it was indeed the CEO. It was hard for them not to think in that direction. Especially when his pale lips seemed to be only a centimeter away from their CEO's ear. If he got any closer, he would probably kiss him. The CEO's aura was obviously much colder. But that young master didn't seem to notice it. The mole under his eye shone with a bewitching luster. What? You don't like me using my body? Then let me kiss you. Fujio said happily, and it seemed like she was about to take action. Chin Mo's eyes suddenly turned cold. He reached out one hand and grabbed his wrist tightly, pressing Fujio down on the table. That look in his eyes showed that he really wanted to strangle Fujio. Then, he forcefully pulled out Fujio's wallet from her school uniform pocket and threw it into the waiter's hands. His voice was as cold as a cold pond in the snow. Swipe all the cards for him. Yes. At this moment, no waiters dared to disobey Chin Mo's orders. Everyone could see that their CEO's cold and indifferent image was about to be blown away by this person's teasing. Fujio still wanted to keep some of her assets, so she tried to negotiate with Chin Mo. Can you leave me 1,000 for my living expenses? Chin Mo didn't listen to Fujio at all. He pressed him down with that posture and looked down at him. Chin Mo had to restrain himself from breaking this guy's wrist. Who knew that this guy would learn to be obedient? He maintained that posture and looked at him with a smile. His warm breath seemed to fall on the back of his hand. He couldn't tell why. Chin Mo felt that Fujio was like his cat. Even her hair was soft, and it scratched his palm again and again. People who didn't know better would think that the young man was acting coquettishly. But in fact, this guy was just pretending. Even if they were to play games together in the future, he would change this guy's bad habit of flirting. Where did he learn to flirt with anyone he saw? Chin Mo narrowed his eyes slightly. He put out the cigarette in the ashtray with one hand and pinned Fujio down with the other. He was still wearing a suit jacket, and a lock of black hair fell down with his movements. He looked very masculine, not only in his posture, but also in his fierce eyes. Chin Mo's current state was enough to make one's legs go weak. No wonder his fans called him Almighty Chin. Too handsome. So cool. Unfortunately, Fujio wasn't in the mood to appreciate the Almighty's beauty. After all, her card was about to be used up, and this was simply bad news for a hacker who had just saved some money for her computer. President Chin. The waiter walked over with sweat on his forehead and raised the card with both hands. A total of 26,580 yuan has been spent. Lord Zhou's card only has 5,000 yuan, which has been used up. Chin Mo nodded faintly. Fujio thought that this was the end of it. After all, the money in her card was gone. What else could she do? Chapter 51. Tab. People who came here to eat never tabulated, especially people of their age and circle. They loved to compare who was more generous. Tabulating when they went out to eat. How shabby was that? Coco lowered his head and bit his finger. The CEO's plan was too evil. He was obviously trying to help Fujio become famous in the circle. In the future, no matter where Fujio went, this matter would be brought up. Fujio didn't care about her reputation, but she cared about money. Almighty Chin, didn't the guide tell you that your friend doesn't have any money? Shouldn't you make up for the difference? Chin Mo glanced at him faintly. That's the normal process of a gay meetup. Obviously, that doesn't suit you. In order to prevent you from having the ridiculous idea of paying with your body, it's better for you to hand over the money. Fujio, this lobster meal was really a loss. In order to avoid further losses, Fujio, who originally didn't want to bring the 2 live lobsters home, decided to carry them back even if she had to carry them. This was her treat, and she still owed him 30,000 yuan. But spending money to avoid disaster, and after this meal, she wouldn't have to worry about being investigated again. Do you want to go back yourself, or do you want me to give you a ride? Chin Mo glanced at the lobsters in the young man's arms, and he seemed to think that the young man looked like his cat that had just been drenched in the rain. Chin Mo knew that the young man only looked pitiful, but his claws were still hard, but he still asked in a low voice. After all, the Chin family's etiquette and upbringing were there. Chin Mo also thought of another point. If this guy asked for anything in the car, as long as it wasn't too much, he would agree. After all, a big part of the reason why he met Spade Z this time was to ask him to join his team. Fujio didn't stand on ceremony. She flipped her silver hair and curled up the corner of her mouth. You give me a ride. I don't even have enough money to take a taxi. This place is a bit far from my house, and it's not practical to skateboard back. Okay. Chin Mo reached out and opened the car door. His expression was very calm, and he still looked cold and noble. At this time, the atmosphere of a normal gay meetup began. Fatty and Coco always thought that it wasn't a gay meetup. It was simply a knife and sword fight. Fatty was still driving. There was music in the car. Fujio sat on the left side of Chin Mo. There was some distance between them, but they didn't talk much. Coco wasn't used to this, and he couldn't help but ask, Fujio, what about your mom's company? Is it really going to close down? Why did it close down? Fujio retracted her gaze from the night outside the window. Her eyes were deep. Coco licked his lips. I heard that most of the contestants in your mom's company have been poached away, and now they can't form a team. If you don't make adjustments, you'll be disqualified. Once the investors pull out, your mom's company won't be able to hold on. There is indeed such a thing. Fujio smiled, and a bone-chilling coldness appeared in her eyes. Who did you hear this from? That 3 outside? Or that illegitimate child of the Fu family? No matter who you heard it from, my mother's company will not collapse. Even if it collapses, it should be someone else. Coco didn't expect that the person who had been so unrestrained in the hotel just a moment ago would be filled with such a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 52. Chin Mo also looked over at Fujio. That pair of deep eyes made it impossible to see through his emotions. President Chin, we've arrived at the Fu mansion. Fatty stopped the car. Chin Mo glanced at Fujio again. Fujio was still holding 2 live lobsters in her arms. She raised her head and smiled at him. Then I'm leaving. Thank you, Almighty Chin, for sending me back. See you in the game later. The 2 of them were sitting together. As long as Chin Mo tilted his head, he could see that innocent face. He could even see the fine hairs on his cheeks. Seeing him like this, Chin Mo didn't care so much about his bad mood. That's all. You're not going to say anything else? Anything else? Drive slowly. Send me a WeChat message when you get home. I'll call you for a dungeon raid. Fujio leaned forward and brushed the black hair in front of Almighty Chin's forehead with her fingers. If the Almighty is willing to fight in person, they will definitely offer a higher price. Originally, Chin Mo wanted to say, if you're here because of your family's company, I can help you solve it. But he didn't expect that this guy would only be quiet for a minute before he started to court death here again. Chin Mo took a deep breath, narrowing his eyes. His chest rose and fell, and his voice was low. The words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Scram! Angry again. Fujio glared at him and then burst into laughter. She raised her hands and rubbed Chin Mo's hair. Almighty, don't be so cool all the time. Be more amiable. After all, this is the first time we've met. Don't leave on bad terms. Yeah, you look better this way. Coco and Fatty sat in front of the car, not daring to look back. What was that brat doing? Rub the CEO, Captain, S head. Have you ever heard of plucking feathers from a tiger's head? This was the same logic. The CEO probably wanted to tear him into pieces this time. Chin Mo had never been rubbed on the head before. His fingers loosened, and tightened again. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He pushed open the car door and threw the smiling young man out. Drive. Two very cold words, without a trace of warmth. Fatty's body trembled. Without saying a word, he immediately stepped on the accelerator. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, his CEO wouldn't be able to control himself and fight with Spade Z. Fujio, on the other hand, was very happy. She curled her thin lips and waved at the rearview mirror with a bright smile. Almighty Chin, who was dazzled by such a smile, snorted coldly and turned his head away. Fujio raised her eyebrows. Avoid her. But she still had ways to harass him. He lowered his head and sent a WeChat message over. Guru, remember to log on when you get home. Let old driver carry you through the dungeon. Chin Mo held his chin and swiped open the message. He snorted coldly. Do I need you to carry me to clear the dungeon? Then you take me. It's all the same. After Fujio finished playing, she added a smiley face. It's more fun to play games with friends. This time, Chin Mo didn't reject her. He replied indifferently, got it. Was that a yes? Fujio raised her eyebrows. It seemed like the Almighty wasn't completely inhumane. If Almighty Chin really wanted to clear a dungeon with her, in that case, the price of the order would go up. Group photos and the like were also included in the list. It wasn't easy to get the Almighty to help clear a dungeon. She wouldn't accept any normal price. She had to change it to VIP treatment. Not bad, not bad. There were benefits to having a gay meetup. Chapter 53. Thinking of this, Fujio's gloominess was swept away, and even the lobster in her arms didn't look so disgusting anymore. How much money the Almighty had cheated her today, she would earn it back from him. 2 words, fairness. At this moment, Chin Mo's deep eyes were still looking at the few WeChat messages on his phone. His expression was complicated and hard to understand. He thought the young man would talk about something, but the young man didn't mention a word. Coco looked back at him and said hesitantly, it seems like Fujio didn't come to find Captain because of his family. But it's hard to accept that he changed so much all of a sudden. Was he acting in order to get close to Captain in the past? Maybe he knew that Captain liked well-behaved girls before, and now that he doesn't need to act anymore, he released himself. Chin Mo glanced at the blinking WeChat profile picture again, and his expression was indifferent. Acting? Is this something a stupid person like him can come up with? Hearing that, Coco's mouth twitched. Captain, although Fujio wasn't that smart before, he was very smart now. Maybe he was really acting. But if he was acting, there was no need to tell them that he was Spade Z. Thinking about it this way, he felt that he overestimated Spade Z's ability to read people's expressions. If he really knew how to act, Fujio wouldn't have flirted with the CEO so much that he wanted to kill him. Then why did he change so much? Was it because his family had changed? Coco was very confused. As long as he keeps acting like this, we don't need to care about him. Chinamo tilted his head and closed his eyes, as if he was taking a nap. His black hair was messy because he had just been rubbed, but he still felt that there was something on his head, so he uncomfortably rubbed it with his fingers. Coco and Fatty froze when they heard that. Keep acting like this. What kind of flirting with the CEO? Coco lowered his head and bit the rabbit's ear. Captain was really indulging that Spade Z. At night, Chen Xiaodong was still standing at the door, looking around on his tiptoes. He was very anxious, but young master didn't reply to his messages. He only said, he already knows now. Then he hung up. Chen Xiaodong's heart skipped a beat. He already knows now. What did that mean? Did it mean that young master already knew that young master wanted to sleep with him? Wouldn't the young master never be able to return? Chen Xiaodong's eyes widened as he stood up. No. He had to think of something. How about breaking into the military compound? The Qin family seemed to be in there. Just as Chen Xiaodong was hopping with worry, Fujio patted him on the shoulder from behind. What are you doing standing here in the middle of the night? Young master. Chen Xiaodong's eyes lit up. Young master who came back alive. Young master, have you been beaten up somewhere? Don't worry, just tell me, I'll go get the medicine for you. Fujio listened to his explanation and rubbed her temples. Why do you always want me to get beaten up? Look carefully, I don't have any injuries on my body. Only then did Chen Xiaodong notice that there was indeed nothing wrong with his young master. Instead, that handsome face was tinged with a layer of red, as if he had eaten to his heart's content. He was even holding 2 live Australian lobsters in his arms. Chapter 54. Jiang City wasn't near the sea, so a pair of Australian lobsters like this would be worth a lot of money even if they were dead, let alone alive. Didn't young master run out of money recently? How did he get these things? Almighty Qin gave them to me. After Fujio said that, she threw the lobster into his arms. Find a bucket and let Aunt Lin keep it. Cook it when my mom comes back. Qin. Young Master Qin gave him lobsters? Chen Xiaodong's eyes widened, and he suddenly felt that the thing in his hands was as heavy as gold. Was the relationship between young master and young Master Qin good enough for young Master Qin to give him a gift? This was something he had never seen before in his life. One had to know that when young master first confessed to young Master Qin almost asked someone to crush young master with one hand. Now, he was giving young master a gift. But, giving lobsters as a gift. Wasn't that a little too weird? Almighty Qin's world wasn't something mortals like them could understand. Wait, young master, where are you going? Chen Xiaodong couldn't help but ask when he saw Fujio going upstairs. Before Fujio closed the door, she only said one thing to him, get on the game and flirt with the Almighty. Chen Xiaodong and Aunt Lin, who had just walked out, both felt that their young master was a little obsessed recently. He actually began to fight with the computer without eating or sleeping for a man. But they knew their young master's skills better than anyone else, and he didn't even know how to operate his character in the game. Ever since Madame started her company, they knew that their young master was terrible at playing with netizens. Such a young master actually took the opportunity to hook up with Almighty Qin in the game. One had to admit that sometimes, when people got lucky, it was quite shocking. Aunt Lynn didn't cook those 2 lobsters. She didn't dare to touch them when she heard that they were gifts from young Master Chin. She carefully got a small wooden bucket, put some seaweed in it, and sent it upstairs for her young master to keep as a pet. When Fujio came out of the shower, the first thing she saw were the 2 lobsters baring their fangs at her. She casually picked one up and looked around. Then, she took a photo with her phone and sent it to Chin Mo. I'm using my new pet lobster to summon my teammate, Almighty Chin. The photo was taken with Fujio's body turned sideways. She didn't even notice that when the photo was posted, her collarbone could be vaguely seen through her loose pajamas. Chin Mo unlocked his phone and glanced at the photo. His gaze swept over the youngster's fair and delicate collarbone. His gaze paused, and he frowned as he replied, his voice a little cold. Don't send such a photo in the future. Such a picture. What was wrong with the photo she sent? Fujio looked at the thing in her hand. Wasn't it just a lobster? And he, Almighty Chin, personally gave it to her. Forget it. Talking was more important. Are you playing online? Fujio sent a voice message while turning on the computer case. When Chin Mo heard it, the sound was very clear. Was this guy using such a lousy machine to play games? Wait for me at the Bridge of Helplessness. Of course, Fujio wouldn't refuse. She quickly logged into her account and teleported her character to the side of the Bridge of Helplessness. Ding. Something seemed to have been sent over. Your friend Chin Mo has gifted you 99,999 game gold coins. Do you accept? This wasn't the end of it. Another message came over right after. Chapter 55. Your friend Chin Mo has sent you another 99,999 game coins. Do you want to accept it? 99,999 game coins. If converted into RMB, it would be 9,999 yuan. Not to mention those precious rainbow dress diamonds, which could not be bought normally. What was the Almighty doing? Even a cool person like Lord Zhou couldn't figure out what the other party was thinking. Accept. Chin Mo sent a total of 6 words, gift for the gay meetup. Fujio, Almighty, where on earth did you find the tutorial for the gay meetup? Why did it sound like a betrothal gift? Who would give money directly to their friends in the game? Fujio didn't know if she was lucky or unlucky to have met such a rich and black-bellied guy. After thinking about it, she still didn't accept it. But she wanted all the diamonds. She could grind them up and make weapons for the 2 of them. Aren't you short of money? Almighty Chin was indeed the Almighty Chin who had shaken Suzhou City. Every time he spoke, he was so cold and straightforward. Fujio unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. She curled up her lips and said, I am short of money, but Almighty, if you give it like this, I will think that you want to keep me. Chin Mo's fingers tightened on the mouse, and he laughed, very coldly. Give me back the diamonds you just accepted. That's useful. Fujio held the lollipop in her mouth, crossed her long legs, and quickly replied, Almighty Chin, I'm telling you the truth because we are brothers. You can't be too stingy, especially a man. How can you take back something you've given? I just accepted a job, so let's go play the game. Be good. Chin Mo's deep eyes stared at the words on the LCD screen, especially the word be good. His whole body emitted a cold and oppressive aura, which made Secretary Liang, who came to report, take a step back. What's wrong with the CEO? He suddenly felt like he was going to kill someone. Then he saw his CEO raise his hand and fiercely type on the keyboard. Shut up, play the game. Chin Mo never expected this guy to spit out any ivory when he spoke. It was all because he was Spadesy. He wouldn't kill him. Chinemo told himself that again. Fujio sent another head-scratching emoji. Diamonds can be used to make weapons, what do you want? Gradually, Chinemo got used to his way of speaking. He replied coldly, whatever. Then I'll do my own research when the time comes. With that, Fujio hooked her earphones. I'm inviting you into the team. All right. The moment he finished speaking, the scenery in the game changed. Without the soft and delicate flowing water, peach blossoms shone brightly. Instead, he arrived at an ancient tomb. There were 4 other players at the entrance of the tomb. Some of the players had approached Spadesy for business before. Knowing Spadesy's fighting ability, he was about to open the door. Spadesy said that his friend was coming to play with them. In the beginning, they felt that if there were too many people, it wouldn't be worth it to clear the ancient tomb. After all, they would have to split the loot. If someone didn't play well, they might not be able to complete the first clear. But when they saw the friend Spadesy was talking about, one by one, they all froze. Chin Chin Chin. Almighty Chin. How was this possible? It must be another fake version using Almighty Chin's name to swindle customers. Chapter 56. The 4 players looked at each other at the same time, and then looked at Chinemo in horror. Max level, complete data. What was even more dazzling was his shining PK ranking. Number 1. This was definitely Almighty Chin. They saw Almighty Chin. Almighty Chin in real life, petrified, excited, and excited. It was impossible to describe the feelings of these 4 players. Sitting in the internet cafe, the fingers holding the mouse were trembling. That was Almighty Chin. The Almighty Chin who never played online games privately, but could make millions of fans go crazy over an esports game live broadcast. Were they really not dreaming? Whatever, let's kill ourselves first before entering the game. Only by dying once would they believe this fact. Why aren't you moving? Let's start. Fujio was still typing, but in the blink of an eye, she saw that the 4 players in front of her were all dead. What was going on? Fujio paused for a moment and suddenly seemed to realize something. Is it because of you? Fujio sent this message in a private message. Chinemo used one hand to reply, I haven't played many amateur online games. I only play in professional leagues, so I'm not sure. You haven't come in to clear a dungeon. Fujio was shocked. Chinemo replied indifferently, I haven't done it privately, but 3 times when the company needs it for publicity. According to Fujio's understanding of the Almighty, his words meant that he had only cleared a dungeon 3 times since he started playing games, and each time it was for a live broadcast. No wonder they died, they were all scared by you, Almighty. Fujio raised her eyebrows and typed quickly. Then, aren't you lonely when you play games? Great, I'm here, and I'll make you rich. Chinemo didn't care about him at all. This guy was the type of person who would take advantage of others, and the more he talked to him, the more attractive he would be. It was best to ignore him. But surprisingly, he was a little more pleasing to the eye than the others. With this thought, Chinemo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He sat on the big leather chair, and the stars behind him filled the sky. The lights of the whole city seemed to become his background at that moment. Secretary Liang bent down to pass the coffee to him. He was wearing pure white gloves. Their CEO had always been a neat freak, and he couldn't ignore the details. He really wanted to look at the screen and see who CEO was talking to. Usually, at this time, the CEO would be reading the financial news. Why would he be playing games? Who was on the other side of the computer? Last time, he had asked the president to stop the meeting halfway. This time, the CEO adjusted the office hours. She was definitely a little demon. Otherwise, why would the CEO play games instead of doing his job? However, he was very curious about who this little demon was. It was as if there was a claw scratching at his heart. However, the CEO didn't want him to know anything. How was he going to report this to his boss and Madam Secretary Liang? Qin Mo extinguished his cigarette and lifted his coffee. He looked at him coldly. Remember who you belong to. Now, close the door and get out. Secretary Liang shuddered. He braced himself and answered, yes. Why was the CEO's aura even more oppressive than the boss's? Wasn't he still a student? No wonder the CEO's fans called him Almighty Qin. He was the reincarnation of a tyrant. Speaking of which, for someone to be so unafraid of the CEO, he was really brave. Chapter 57. On the other side, Secretary Liang was still making false reports. On the other side, the entire Hero server exploded. No one was playing the game anymore. Almost the entire world was flooded with messages. Holy sh*t, I can't believe I'm seeing Almighty Qin in the game in my lifetime. He's not invisible, it can't be true. Our fan group didn't receive any news from the team's live broadcast. How could Almighty Qin be playing? Impossible. It's true. A lot of people saw it. Almighty Qin is still playing dungeons. The one above, stop dreaming. Almighty Qin plays dungeons. Almighty Qin only plays PK in the league. Go and see for yourself if you don't believe me. Almighty Qin is with a newbie. It looks like they're having an ambiguous relationship. Ambiguous relationship. Very ambiguous. When the Supreme Alliance on the top floor heard the news that their CEO was playing dungeons, they also entered the game. Now they were looking at each other in dismay. Then, they all looked at Coco. The young cat-like streamer bit the rabbit's ear and said, "Don't ask me, I don't know either." "Captain, how did you get hooked up with Spade Z to play dungeons? Who said that dungeons are boring? Do you know that the game system is about to crash as soon as you show up?" There were over 10 million online surfing in the whole server, and the technicians were going crazy, okay? The agent of the Supreme Alliance also received the news at the first moment. At that time, a CEO of a live broadcast company told him. He smiled gently and said in a businesslike tone, "Our CEO Qin never plays dungeons. You must have mistaken him for someone else." The CEO simply handed him the notebook. The agent felt a chill down his spine. "Wait, I need to make a call first." He took a deep breath before he hung up the phone, but he didn't expect that after he dialed the number, CEO Qin's first words were, "I'm playing dungeons. If you have something to say, talk to me tomorrow. Don't hang around outside all the time. Go back to the company and work." "I'm hanging up." His voice was cold, and the phone was hung up. It was indeed their young Master Qin style. "But, CEO, I'm your agent. I should be the one controlling you, not the other way around. The point is, why are you really playing dungeons? What if it's on the headlines tomorrow?" "Wait, headlines." The agent's eyes turned, and he immediately called the PR team. "Write a long article now, saying that CEO Qin is playing dungeons to find new blood for the team." What ambiguous relationship? What's with the ambiguous relationship? Someone said that Chairman Qin is playing this game for a newbie. That newbie is helping Chairman Qin take quests and earn money. Every time he completes a first kill, he gets 5,000 yuan, and he gets to take a photo with Chairman Qin. We're all playing now, trying to get in line. The manager's chest heaved up and down. Who could tell him what was wrong with the CEO? In the past, he had to beg the CEO to allow him to enter the game and do a live stream. All this was on the premise that he did not have to attend a meeting, so he had nothing to do and was in a good mood. Their boss Chin had always walked the path of an altar that said, like me or not, I'm just that cold. How could he help someone get a first clear for just $5,000? President, if money could move you, why didn't you tell me earlier? The agent was extremely distressed. Her expression immediately changed as she asked, which area is CEO Chin in? Ah. What? The agent snorted coldly. I want to hire him to help me clear the dungeons too. Chapter 58. Fujio also realized that there were a lot of onlookers as she was playing. And those people all had the same golden title above their heads as Almighty Chin. Fujio raised her eyebrows, sucked on her lollipop, and smiled wickedly. She sent a message to Chin Mo, Almighty Chin, you are so popular. All the professional teams in the country are here because of you. Chin Mo glanced at the screen and didn't care at all. Don't look at others, just focus on the monster you want to kill. So cold. Fujio flicked her finger and sent a big move over. All the bosses were killed. The first kill was completed. Once again, Spade Z and Chin Mo's names appeared high up on the server's bulletin board. It was already late at night, but the netizens' enthusiasm didn't die down at all. They were all staring at the screen. Whether it was the people in the internet cafes or the people in the professional leagues. They crazily bought orders again and again, hoping that Spade Z would take their orders. Fujio saw this scene, and her eyes flashed. She smiled wickedly and sent a message. Last order tonight, the highest bidder wins. Last order. The agent thought to himself. It wasn't easy to get a chance to enslave the CEO, and he wouldn't give it to anyone else. So he made a decisive bid. He raised the price to 10,000 in one go. There was never a lack of rich people in the game. Who didn't want to be in close contact with their idol? It was just money. Ad. In an instant, the game's page was filled with bids. The price went from 5,000 to 50,000. Fujio crossed her long legs, and her silver hair stood up because she was wearing headphones. She watched the price go up, and she accidentally sent the truth to Chin Mo, Almighty, why do I feel like you are auctioning off your first time, ha 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 ha, Fujio. Even through the screen, Fujio could feel the viciousness of the man's clenching teeth. If you don't shut up, I'll kick you out with your computer. Chin Mo's eyes were gloomy, and his slender fingers held the mouse tightly. He tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart, but he couldn't hold it in anymore and still sent the message. This was what Secretary Liang saw when he came in. She glanced over at Chin Mo before retreating quickly. So scary. The demonized CEO. He only went out to make 2 phone calls and report the information. How did the CEO's eyes become so bloodthirsty? He felt that no matter who went in now, the CEO would be able to crush that person's neck. So scary. People in love can be so unreasonable. A second ago, he was still smiling, and the next second, he was about to kill. Unable to hold it in any longer, Secretary Liang made another call. Hello, madam. Yes, it's me. I think the CEO quarreled with the other party. Yes, that's right, it's the kind of quarrel between a couple. In fact, after Fujio sent that message, she also felt that it was inappropriate. After all, she could earn so much money because of Almighty Chin. After some thought, he sent another line of words. Don't worry, if there's an auction for your first time, I'll definitely be the first to bid. I won't let them snatch it away. Even though they were chatting privately, Chin-mo wanted to drag this guy out from the computer and crush his mouth. Apart from being good at playing games, this guy was basically asking people to kill him at any moment. Chapter 59. Chin-mo narrowed his eyes fiercely, and his eyes were deep and cold. Aren't you going to start the dungeon? Do you want me to break your claws? Sigh, the Almighty is acting like a tsundere again. Fu-Jio stretched lazily. It was better not to flirt too much, or it would cause a rebound effect. With this thought in mind, Fu-Jio reached out her hand with the lollipop in her mouth. She clicked the mouse and quickly invited the highest bidder, I'm the Almighty's agent, into the game dungeon. I'm the Almighty's agent. What a strange nickname. Fu-Jio sent a private message to Chin-mo while locating him. Chin-mo glanced at the player, and a cold glint flashed across his deep, dark eyes. The agent was still showing off and asked the assistant next to him, how do you say you want CEO to do something? The assistant shrunk his neck. Just type, he only needed to type. The agent was so beautiful. Who would have thought that he would one day become the landlord? Just as he was about to put his hands on the keyboard, a sentence appeared in the game. Do you want to go offline now, or do you want me to call you and force you to go offline? Big Manager Feng. Feng Yi didn't expect his identity to be exposed as soon as he arrived, and his back suddenly trembled. Then he heard his CEO say, it seems that the company has given you too few tasks recently, and you even have time to play games. You'll work overtime for a week starting tomorrow. Feng Yi, wait a minute. He spent 50,000 yuan to enslave CEO. It wasn't so that the president could enslave him better in the future. What dungeon? This was a trap. He must have a hole in his brain to think of taking the opportunity to enslave CEO. Didn't he say that he could play as long as he paid? Liar. Feng Yi was about to cry. 50,000 yuan, and all he got was the pleasure of being abused. Sure enough, he shouldn't have provoked CEO. But, that Spade Z's movements were so cool. One move to kill them all. And he still had time to type with CEO. Wait a minute. He could actually coordinate perfectly with CEO's movements. No one could keep up with CEO's gaming speed. This was definitely an expert among experts. Feng Yi's blood was boiling. He stood up from the sofa with a bang, grabbed his assistant, and pointed at the screen. This Spade Z, I don't care how you do it, find out everything about him, whether he's a man or a woman, if he has a boyfriend or girlfriend, how old he is, where he's from, and what's his occupation. I want to see his photo on my desk tomorrow. Ah. President Fu, why do you want his photo? The assistant was confused. Could it be that the vice president had become stupid after spending 50,000 yuan? Feng Yi's eyes sparkled. I want to nurture him into a professional almighty second only to the CEO. Of course, I have to see what he looks like first. Go get it. This was an unexpected harvest. His maneuvers were too beautiful. This kind of gameplay was most suitable for live streaming. The team had always needed such a person who could coordinate with the CEO. But even Coco and the others couldn't do it. Now that he could finally do a special topic, it was as if God was helping him. Wait a minute, I'll add her as a friend first. Feng Yi had thought that since his CEO had revealed his identity, he would be verified quickly. Unexpectedly, rejected. Chapter 60. Feng Yi didn't believe it, so he kept pressing the friend button. But as soon as the game was over and the loot was distributed, he was kicked out. Kicked out. Fu-Jio had a habit of never adding friends when she was playing games. Even the addition of Almighty Qin was a surprise. How could she add another person? Of course, she rejected him. Now all her attention was on the money she had earned. The number on her bank card skyrocketed, which made her feel indescribably happy. It was really different to fight a boss with a god. He was handsome, and his appearance fee was so high. Including the previous 2 games, she had earned 60,000 yuan, which was enough for her to buy computer parts. Even if she threw away the lobster money she owed today, she still had about 40,000 yuan. Fujio bit her lollipop and sent Almighty Qin 4 words without hesitation: let's call it a day. Before we go to sleep, let's calculate. Qin Mo slowly typed on the keyboard. The money you earned today. Fujio paused. She dropped her lollipop. Why did the Almighty still want to calculate money with her? This wasn't like the rich guy who gave her 399,999 yuan as soon as she came online. I thought the Almighty would treat money like dirt. Fujio flipped her silver hair. The money in her hands flew away, which was a terrible feeling. Qin Mo replied leisurely, it seems like you have a fundamental misunderstanding of me. I'm a businessman. Who would do things that aren't profitable? Fujio quickly defined him. She thought about how she still needed to bring the Almighty around in the future, so it would be good to establish a long-term partnership. She smiled devilishly. I'll transfer half of it to your WeChat later. Half? Qin Mo smiled faintly. Who said anything about half? I'll get 90%, and you get 10%. Fujio looked at the extremely lopsided dividend ratio and couldn't help but say, Almighty, don't you think it's shameless to split the money like this? No. Qin Mo's voice was indifferent, and he asked Fujio 3 questions in a row. Whose name is the one who took the jobs? Who are the onlookers looking at? Who is the one who bid so high in the end? Fujio, it's all me. Qin Mo took a puff of his cigarette before typing another line of words. So, it's only fair that you get 1 and I get 9. In the face of such a vengeful man, what else could Fujio say? She opened WeChat and transferred a large amount of money to him with a condition: continue to work with me. When Fujio transferred the money, she told herself that she was casting a long line to catch a big fish. The Almighty had already earned 60,000 per round. The next time they started advertising, they would definitely earn more. Treat it as an investment. But he still felt the pain. What was originally a net profit of 5 digits had shrunk to 4 digits in the time it took to say a single sentence. Fujio bit her lollipop gloomily. Aside from being cute when she was flirting with him, this man wasn't easy to trick. Fujio had just transferred the money when Qin Mo received a tearful call from his agent. CEO Qin, that Spadesy actually rejected me, he actually rejected me. After Qin Mo heard the general meaning of the message, his gaze deepened. He opened his phone and saw a WeChat transfer of more than 30,000 yuan. That guy must have been very reluctant when he transferred the money. Just like today when he had to pay the bill at the hotel. Chapter 61. Qin Mo turned off the computer and stood up, but he didn't go to sleep right away. His slender fingers moved slightly, and he sent a WeChat message to Fujio. Did you just reject a player's friend request? Fujio agreed and felt that she should flirt with him again before going to sleep. She opened the voice message and replied, except for the Almighty, I didn't add anyone else in the game. Are you touched? Do you want to marry me? If it's someone with a body like the Almighty's, I might consider sleeping with him. Qin Mo took the documents from Secretary Liang. He was still pressing his phone with one hand, and his lazy voice came into Secretary Liang's ears, with the clarity of a teenager. Secretary Liang couldn't hear the voice on the other side of the phone, but his CEO suddenly stopped moving. He stood there without saying a word, and the expression on his face kept changing. His fair and slender fingers clutched the phone beside his ear, and his eyes were filled with uncontrollable coldness. It was as if he would crush the person on the other side of the phone to death if he said one more word. Secretary Liang didn't dare to watch anymore. He lowered his head and pretended to pack his bag. Finally, his CEO took a deep breath, opened the WeChat message, and replied with a deep voice message, "If I hear the word sleep from your mouth again, you don't have to talk anymore." Sleep. Secretary Liang's eyes were burning. Qin Mo glanced at him and closed the door with an indifferent expression. Secretary Liang, no, CEO, where do you want me to go in the middle of the night? It's very cold outside the rooftop. After dealing with the eavesdropper, Qin Mo unbuttoned his shirt with one hand and sent a voice message with the other. The player who added you is my agent. I know. Fujio twirled her silver hair with her fingers and put her legs on the computer table, looking indescribably handsome. If I don't want to, I can use your back door. Why should I use someone else's? Maybe it was because it was too late, but when the youngster's voice rang in her ears, it didn't sound so annoying anymore. Qin Mo pulled out a towel from the side. When he tilted his head, his white shirt was half open, revealing his beautiful abs and sexy mermaid lines. As he unbuttoned his pants, they moved up slightly. At that moment, Qin Mo seemed to have thought of something. He paused for a moment and quickly threw the trousers to the side. He pressed the phone screen and replied indifferently, "Tomorrow, the Qin group will sign the first batch of rookies. As a specially recruited member, you can come directly. What about the preliminaries in half a month? This is an internal move." Fujio understood Almighty Qin's meaning with just these 3 words. She curled up the corner of her mouth and said, "I'll go after I buy the accessories tomorrow." Yes. This was Almighty Qin's reply. If he didn't say anything, it would always be a few words, incomparably cold. Fujio didn't mind. She yawned and laid down on the bed casually. Her soft silver hair spread out, accentuating her white pointy chin. She replied in a daze, "Good night." In the foggy bathroom, Qin Mo listened to the sound coming from the phone. It was low and soft, not at all like the domineering and mischievous youngster that usually infuriated people. Subconsciously, his finger slid across the screen and tapped on the short green voice message again. Separated by the fog, no one could see the expression on Qin Mo's elegant and handsome face. Chapter 62. After realizing what he had done, Almighty Qin's beautiful eyebrows furrowed. The black hair hanging in front of his forehead was still dripping water, and just like that, it hit the phone screen. Qin Mo took the towel and threw the phone away. He must have played too much games that his fingers were broken. Why did he think that guy's voice was nice? He obviously wanted someone to strangle him. Another night passed. Fujio woke up the next day, but she wasn't in a hurry to go to school. It was Wednesday. Although school was important, buying spare parts and signing with the Qin group were obviously more important. Fujio thought about it and decided to ask for a leave. When she made this request, Chen Xiaodong stood beside her and looked at her with an expression that said, "I knew young master wouldn't be obedient for a month. You're going to be a demon again." Fujio curled her lips into a smile. She freed one hand, leaned over, and patted his cheek lightly. Your young master, have something to do. Go to class by yourself, and help me ask for leave, sick leave. Don't always let the teacher think that I like to skip classes." Chen Xiaodong was stunned the first time he was patted. His young master was too handsome up close, so handsome that he couldn't react. Also, his young master winked at him. Chen Xiaodong took a deep breath. No, he had to stay away from his young master in the future. What if he was turned gay? He was going to get married and have kids in the future. According to the information provided by the Almighty, the internal recruitment for the Qin Group's team would officially start after 1. Fu Jiu had money on hand now. Even though it was only 4 digits, it wasn't a problem for her to buy a good computer. For example, graphics cards and RAM. She really didn't understand physics, so she didn't want to waste the teachers at school. Instead, she wanted to find a place to buy her equipment. Not only did she want to protect her family's company, but she also wanted to slap the faces of those ungrateful scumbags who left just like that. Fu Jiu's long and narrow eyes narrowed. She unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. She put her left hand in her pocket and looked up at the computer city in front of her. It was said that there were a lot of good stuff hidden here. Many professional players came here to buy spare parts. It was a useful place for this competition. Fu Jiu pushed the door open and walked in. She followed the guide on the technology forum and found the store with the cool decorations. It was indeed different from the ordinary computer shops outside. The moment they entered, they felt as if they had entered an electronic world. There were 4 big screens in the shop, each of which was playing the game. This was Almighty Qin's in-game image. He lifted one hand, and black feathers filled the sky, forming a giant vortex. Each feather could kill the opponent. Fu Jiu also thought that Almighty Qin's ultimate move was very cool. But, her thin lips perked up. This seemed to be the scene of them playing the game together yesterday. After all, the person who cooperated with the Almighty to use this ultimate move was her. Fu Jiu recognized her own character, Spade Z. It seemed like playing with the Almighty had a bigger impact than she had imagined. The book that they had seen last night had been used by the shop as a display. She wondered if the shop owner would give her a discount if she told them her identity. Chapter 63. Fu Jiu knew that he wasn't referring to her just from the way he addressed her. After all, that old guy wanted the whole world to know that she, the prodigal, had nothing to do with him anymore. Since he wasn't referring to her, was he referring to another young Master Fu? Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows and looked to her side. A young man about the same age as her, dressed in a white suit. He was quite good-looking, but his head was like his mother's, so he wasn't very tall. He didn't seem to like talking much, but there was a hint of impatience in his eyes. He looked like a spoiled young master. This young master was none other than Fu Zhongyi's most precious illegitimate son, Fu Shiming. There were 2 people who came with him to buy accessories, and Fu Jiu knew one of them. No, not really. To be exact, they had met face to face. Back then, she was still naive and dressed like a hooligan. When she quarreled with Yi Honghua, it was this guy who looked at her with a smile on his face. Fu Jiu could still remember the way he looked at her, contemptuous and disdainful. It was probably because she kept seeing that gaze that she would quarrel with Yi Honghua over trivial matters. The manager of the company, Du Zhe. The scumbag who caused her mother to be at a loss. Fu Jiu bit the lollipop with her white teeth, and the corner of her mouth slowly turned up into a smile. Was everyone here? She really had to remember these 2 faces, or else what would happen if she missed when she hit them? Du Zhe also saw the prodigal son that he despised the most. In the past, out of consideration for Yi Honghua, he still had to address him as young Master Fu whenever he saw him. In actual fact, he had long hated this mother and son pair. The older one was from the countryside and the younger one had no taste. Being around them would lower his status. Unlike the person he was following now, who was not only knowledgeable but also talented in games. They were both children of the Fu family, but this person's future was more than twice as bright as that prodigal son's. Young master. Du Zhe glanced at Fu Jiu and turned back to Fu Shiming. Why don't we go over there and take a look? There are so many flies here, and it would be bad if they spoil your mood. Fu Ximing also recognized Fu Jiu. But, so what? He had never put his stupid brother in his eyes. When he was young, he was always called a bastard. He had to yield to Fu Jiu in everything. Now he was right. Who was Fu Jiu anyway? That kind of trash wasn't even worth a glance from him. Fu Ximing raised his chin, pulled up the zipper of his jacket, and said seriously, he doesn't need to leave, so why should I? Keep picking. Didn't you just say that the things here are good? My keyboard needs a new one a long time ago. This one looks good. I'll buy it here. All right. Duzhe laughed. Young master is right. If he doesn't need to leave, then we don't need to leave either. The other person also laughed. Young Master Fu is indeed knowledgeable about computers. When we go to the Qin group later, I will be able to help young Master Fu. I still need Manager Li's help. Duzhe continued, I heard that Manager Feng is very particular about first impressions. In addition to playing games well, he must also be good-looking. This. Chapter 64. Fu Ximing was a calm kid. After hearing Manager Li's words, he didn't show too much excitement. It was good for a high school student to have this little bit of arrogance. Duzhe laughed. He wasn't proud, but he wanted that prodigal to hear the news. He wanted to see the difference between him and young Master Fu. It would be best if he got angry again and started a fight with them in the shop, then he would tell He Honghua about it. Then He Honghua's company wouldn't need any more trouble, and it would definitely collapse. Duzhe's plan was good, but he didn't expect that Fu Jiu wouldn't be angry at all. Fu Jiu was not angry at all after hearing their words. Instead, she picked up a mouse and asked the shop assistant, "How much is this model?" That careless look made it seem like she didn't care about them at all. Duzhe frowned, but he quickly relaxed. Nowadays, even people who don't know anything about computers come to this shop to mess around. In the future, this shop should have a VIP system or something to regulate who can enter and who can't. Manager Li knew a little about the Fu family's business, so he glanced at Fu Jiu. Manager Du, let's do our own thing. Don't care about these small fries. If they want to burn money, let them. This set of equipment isn't cheap. Duzhe thought about it and agreed. He Honghua's current wealth wasn't enough for this prodigal. Buy it, the more the better. But unexpectedly, Fu Ximing also took a fancy to the mouse in Fu Jiu's hand. I want that model too. Duzhe opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. Fu Jiu curled up the corner of her lips. She looked so mischievous that the shop assistant blushed. I'm really sorry. The shop manager heard the sound and walked over. This is the same model as the Almighty's. There's only one left in the shop. Only one left. Then who should it belong to? The shop assistant felt that it should belong to this silver-haired handsome young man. After all, he was holding it in his hand and had to pay for it. But Duzhe wanted to challenge the bottom line. Since it's good stuff, it should belong to whoever pays more. This. The shop manager looked a little embarrassed. To be honest, as a businessman, of course he wanted to make more money. But doing business like this was too unreasonable. In the future, no one would come to their shop to spend money. Just as he was about to say something, he saw a few people in combat uniforms walk in from outside the shop. One of them was about 1.8 meters tall and looked very attractive. It was obvious that he came from a good family. He put a hand on Fu Ximing's shoulder and asked in a low voice, "Ming, what are you doing?" "I'm buying a mouse, but someone doesn't want to give it to me," Fu Ximing said as he glanced at Fu Jiu. "Don't you think it's interesting?" That person laughed, and there was more or less a bit of evil in his voice. That stupid brother of yours, can he compete with you? Old Yuan, give me some rights. We are all gamers. It's not good to give such a good mouse to a layman. Old Yuan was the store manager. Now that he saw that even pro teams had come, he immediately said, then let's go to the highest bidder. This was too much of a bully. The pretty boy would definitely be angry. As the salesgirl thought about it, she looked at Fujio with a touch of worry in her eyes. Chapter 65. 10,000. 10,000 yuan to buy a mouse. Isn't it too expensive? The salesgirl's eyes widened. Moreover, this handsome young man had just asked her in a low voice if she had any preferential policies. How did he suddenly become such a nouveau riche? Duze was also stunned. He Honghua was begging everywhere for a loan. Could it be that there was still money left at home? Otherwise, why would this prodigal be so arrogant? Spending 10,000 to buy a mouse was indeed too expensive. Even a pampered young master like Fu Ziming felt the pinch. However, with so many friends watching and the manager of the Qin Group's club, he couldn't lose face. 11,000. Fu Ziming sneered and raised the price. Who didn't know that he Honghua had no money? You're still pretending, huh? He wanted to see how far this prodigal could go against him. 11,000. Fujio laughed and slowly put down the things in her hands. Boss, you can sell this mouse to this idiot. Spending 10,000 yuan on a mouse, either he has money to burn or he's sick in the head. The store manager, Fujio, didn't care about other people's reactions. She sucked on another lollipop, smiled evilly, and took out the hard drive under the mouse. Actually, I want this more. Give me 10 with the biggest memory. After all, he wasn't here to buy a mouse, but to buy a hard drive. Then why did he still bid? And he even shouted so high. Could it be? Fu Ziming's fingers tightened, and the words came out one after another. Fu. 9. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I tricked you. Fujio put her silver hair back and smiled fiercely. So what? You. Fu Ziming was so angry that his whole body was trembling. However, he was still rational. He was also thinking about his status at all times. He could not argue with a person who was completely unpresentable on so many occasions. That would only lower his image. Fu Ziming took a deep breath and laughed. It's just 10,000 yuan. I know you can't afford it now, but you're smart enough to think of a backup plan. When my dad and your mom get divorced, let's see how you can still be so arrogant. Facing such a person, Fujio wasn't angry at all. Instead, she curled up her thin lips. Fu Ziming, if I were you, I wouldn't tell everyone that I'm an illegitimate child, or that my mother is a mistress, and that my first wife got divorced. It seems like you aren't ashamed of it, but proud of it. As expected, not everyone in this world can be called human. Fu. 9. Fu Ziming saw that more and more people were gathering around them. His face was livid as he said, "Just you wait." When the shop assistant heard this, she understood what was going on. It turned out that this young master was not only bullying people, but he was also occupying Nestle's nest. She hated this kind of person the most. As soon as she saw that Fu Ziming was about to leave, she immediately shouted, "Sir, please settle your bill before you leave. You've spent a total of 11,000 yuan. Are you paying by credit card or cash?" Fu Ziming took another deep breath and pointed at Duze. "Get him to pay." Duze did not expect such an outcome. Not only did he fail to bully that prodigal, He even wasted 111,000 yuan on a mouse that was only worth a few hundred yuan. Most importantly, he was the one who paid for it. What bad luck. What's wrong with this prodigal? Did he become smarter? No, that's impossible. Chapter 66. After getting rid of those annoying scumbags, Fu Jiu was in a better mood than when she first arrived. She curled up the corner of her mouth, lowered her head, and picked out some small parts. She handed them all to the salesgirl and smiled handsomely. That's it. Check out, thank you. The salesgirl took it and gave a 10% discount without hesitation. Her face was still blushing. The beautiful young man's tone was so nice and gentle. She wouldn't get sick of a customer like him even if there were 100 of them. You don't want a mouse? This question wasn't asked by the salesgirl, but by the man who had just put his arm around Fu Ziming's shoulder. He was wearing a uniform, and the smile on his face wasn't friendly at all. Fu Jiu had one hand in her pocket, and she didn't even look at him. She paid the money, took her things, and left. She didn't expect that the man would actually curl his lips, and as he brushed past her, he lightly said, "Interesting." Interesting, wasn't it? Fu Ziming's stupid brother used to blush whenever he saw him. But now, it was like he didn't know him at all. The man narrowed his eyes and didn't take Fu Jiu seriously. After all, no matter how much he changed, he was still gay. He didn't want to provoke such a pervert. Once he got attached, he couldn't get rid of him. Even if he was good-looking, he was still disgusting. Boss, come and see. The shop is broadcasting the video of Almighty Qin and that Spadesy playing games together yesterday. I really envy this guy. In normal competitions, only you can compete with Almighty Qin, but this guy can play games with Almighty Qin. He's so lucky. I asked, and he's not from the Supreme Alliance. I don't know which team he's from. How come he's a newbie? The man followed his teammate's finger and saw the screen full of silver light. He was shocked and couldn't help but spit out 2 words, beautiful. It was really beautiful. Even he couldn't reach that kind of hand speed. This Spadesy. Who the hell was he? 2:00 in the afternoon. A lot of people started to enter the Qin Group's club. Fu Jiu was among them. The person filling out the form asked, "Do you have a letter of introduction?" Fu Jiu shook her head. No. The man frowned and pointed to the queue next to him. Then take your number and wait by the side. When it's your turn, someone will let you in. Fu Jiu didn't say much. She took the number card according to the rules and sat there with her legs crossed. Since she had nothing to do, she began to study the hard drives she bought. She learned how to disassemble and install them, and what kind of casing was needed. It would be best if it was a smaller one, so it would be more effective in disguise. You're also here to sign up for the internal signing? A bespectacled boy at the side seemed to have mustered up all his courage before he dared to talk to Fu Jiu. Me too. Apparently, the boy could not speak fluently. Fu Jiu smiled, looked up, and nodded. The boy was stunned, thinking that this person was really handsome. You'll definitely pass the interview if you look like this. Listen, I heard them say that Manager Feng cares a lot about looks. You're also very handsome. After Fu Jiu said that, she added with a smile, still very young. Just as the two of them were chatting, Fu Jiu's WeChat rang. It was a message from the Almighty, 3 short words, "Have you arrived yet?" Not even a punctuation mark. Chapter 67. In the big office on the top floor of the Qin Group, Secretary Liang clearly saw his CEO's fingers suddenly pause while he was texting. That originally indifferent expression seemed to be starting to become not so good. What was going on? Secretary Liang subconsciously thought of online dating. Qin Mo was still looking at that WeChat message, and he raised his eyebrows. The Qin group is not a place for you to flirt. He sent the message forcefully, and his eyes were cold. Do you understand? Fu Jiu looked at the reply and replied coolly with a lollipop in her mouth, Don't worry, Almighty. No one here is more handsome than you. If I really want to flirt, I will flirt with you. You are a big fish. Big fish. Who would like to be described like that? Did a biology teacher teach this guy Chinese? Qin Mo clenched his fingers, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Secretary Liang stood beside him, and he felt that his CEO was looking at his phone as if he was looking at a dead thing that was about to die. As a bystander, he couldn't help but tremble from the bottom of his heart. What did those people on WeChat do to piss off the CEO? The CEO was in a good mood this morning, but why did he suddenly cool down? Qin Mo pushed open the door of the conference room with one hand and sent the last WeChat message on his phone screen. Then he raised his head and looked straight at Secretary Liang with a pair of deep, watery eyes. His voice was cold. Go and inform the team now. In the future, if anyone in the team flirts with someone in the company, I will cut off their salary. Ah. Yes. After Secretary Liang answered, he felt that the notice was a bit strange. Flirting. All the teams were practicing their skills in the game. In order to prepare for the upcoming city war, everyone had been in the company for a few days. Who would be in the mood to flirt? Besides, how could they flirt with a bunch of young men? Even if they wanted to flirt, they should at least pick a girl, right? At this moment, Fu Jiu was still sitting on the cold bench. She looked at Almighty Qin's message and smiled. Her fingers moved quickly. You go ahead with the meeting. I'm fine on my side. I should be able to pass. She didn't want to bother the Almighty with trivial matters like the competition. She needed him to earn money, so she couldn't just take him out for a walk. Although the Almighty said that he would come to see her after the meeting. However, Fu Jiu still felt that it was a small competition, and she could win easily. Besides, hadn't that manager Feng always wanted to poach her? He couldn't let her down. Knowing that the other party didn't have time to reply to her WeChat, Fu Jiu put her phone away and waited quietly for her number to be called. The boy's face turned red. I don't have eyebrows. I'm very, very ordinary. You'll look better after you take off your glasses. Fu Jiu turned her face, her silver hair shining. Your foundation is there. The boy was a little shy. Thank you. You're welcome. Fu Jiu put the parts into her bag. The boy asked again, which district are you from? Hero. Zone C. With the lollipop in her mouth, Fu Jiu leaned back casually. Even though she was in a corner, she seemed to be glowing. Area C. The boy suddenly widened his eyes and lowered his voice mysteriously. Then, do you know Spade Z from Zone C? Chapter 68. Fu Jiu coughed and didn't say anything. Should she say that she knew or didn't know? The boy's eyes were shining, but he was still stuttering. He's really good. I heard that he will also participate in the internal signing. I really want to see what he looks like in person. Fu Jiu paused and chuckled. Why do you care so much about a newbie? He's not a newbie. The boy's expression became excited. I can see that he's a god. I like him very much. Fujio heard that and raised her arm to pat the boy's shoulder. Thanks. The boy didn't understand. What was there to thank? Just as he was about to think about it, a group of people came out. A group of people walked out. They seemed to have just been reviewed and were led by a manager. Fujio had seen that manager when she bought the hard disk. He was the one who knew Fu Ziming and the others. She narrowed her eyes at the sight. The boy thought that she was interested, so he whispered in her ear, "That's Jean, the manager of the club. He's in charge of the first round. Those people who just went out all have recommendation letters. We don't, so we have to be the last to be audited." Manager Lee also saw Fujio. His expression wasn't very good. He raised his wrist and looked at his watch. "The rest of you can come in together. Watch carefully, don't break the company's computer." The first round of the club's audit was to test their hand speed. Of course, playing blindly was the most basic. Every player had a nervous look on their faces. Because whether they could be internally signed into the strongest league team in the country depended on today's gamble. The club provided everyone with an account to log into the game. But they didn't log into League of Legends, but QQ Dazzle Dance. It was to test their reaction speed. Fujio thought it was a good method. After all, she liked to do a round of QQ Dazzle Dance to train her fingers when she hacked into the network. So QQ Dazzle Dance was not difficult for her. But Fujio had a habit. She liked to do it on a high difficulty level, so that her fingers could stretch better. The sound of the spacebar on the keyboard rang out and stopped at the same time in the office. It was very neat. After every round, the computer would show the hand speed of that round. Everyone could play 3 rounds, and the fastest hand speed was chosen. Of course, they could only see their own screens. But they didn't know that there was a freak among them with a hand speed of 90%. That freak was, of course, Lord Joe. Fujio's hand speed was fixed after playing for a while, so she was the first to stand up, fill in the speed form, and hand it to Manager Lee. Manager Lee looked at him sternly. "The test is 3 rounds, take the highest score. It doesn't matter how many rounds I play." Fujio's voice was indifferent. "Besides, isn't the result voluntary? Since it is voluntary, taking the first round is not against the rules." Chapter 69. Fujio wasn't annoyed by his words. She just said lightly, "Then what do you think we should do? I've already filled in my grades. Take your form back and redo it." Manager Lee didn't even look at him and just threw Fujio's form at him casually. The boy who had just spoken to Fujio looked at him worriedly. Fujio smiled and bent down to pick up the form. Only then did the boy calm down. He wanted to quickly pull him over to do another test. But who would have thought that as soon as Fujio straightened her body, she would raise her hand and use a little force, and the form paper would instantly split in half. At first, it was just the sound of typing on a keyboard. But now, under Fujio's influence, everyone stopped what they were doing. The testing room was so quiet that only the sound of paper being torn could be heard. When Fujio tore that form into pieces and put it in front of Manager Lee, she was surrounded by a flood of discussions. However, she acted as if she hadn't heard anything. She placed one hand on the table and lowered her voice. "If the Chin Club can hire a manager like you, then I'd rather not play games with this team." Suddenly, the testing room was in an uproar. No one dared to talk to the club manager like that. Did he really not want to be nominated? You. Manager Lee had never been provoked like this before. He was completely embarrassed. The anger on his face had already burned his eyes. "Fine. Very good. You have guts, right? Then take your things and scram." Fujio sneered and didn't say anything else. She took her school bag, hung it on her shoulder, and walked straight out of the testing room. Her back view was unbelievably cool. The boy sat on his seat and looked at his hand speed. Then, he looked at the screenshot of the computer beside him. Finally, he gritted his teeth and ran out with his bag. Wait. After Fujio heard the sound behind her, she turned around and raised her eyebrows. Why did you come out? I saw you leave. I don't want to be there anymore. After the boy finished speaking, he broke into a big smile. Although I really want to enter the Chin Corporation, but for someone like me who can't even speak properly, I'm sure I won't get any training resources in the end. That manager looks very snobbish. I don't like this kind of environment. Playing games is supposed to be happy, right? Fujio touched the bridge of her nose. She couldn't help but feel a little guilty after hearing those words. After all, her original intention in playing games was to make money, and now she was trying to take back He Honghua's company. Compared to this obedient child, her starting point seemed to be too utilitarian. Since we don't need to compete, let's go eat. The boy's face was flushed and he was very handsome. I know that there's a good hotpot restaurant here. So, I've always wanted to eat with the people in the game. I didn't expect that my wish would come true so soon. Fujio, why did she always feel that this obedient baby was very similar to Almighty Chin in some aspects? Was it an illusion? Why were these gods so nice to the people in the game? Let's eat, but I don't have money on me. You treat first, and I'll treat you next time. As Fujio spoke, she raised her hand and put it on the boy's shoulder. This time, the obedient baby's face turned even redder, but he was still very cute. He nodded heavily. I'll treat. That hotpot restaurant is mine. Fujio. Chapter 70. In the business conference room, the atmosphere was as low as ever. The people in the marketing department were still talking about this year's data in a trembling voice. They were afraid that if their CEO wasn't satisfied, he would look at them with his deep eyes. Fortunately, the CEO seemed to be absent-minded today, as if he had something else on his mind. He kept playing with a pure white phone in his hand. CEO Chin, that's about it. The people in the marketing department subconsciously waited to be scolded after they finished talking. Unexpectedly, yes. That's it. Everyone couldn't get used to it. Chin Mo didn't pay much attention to it. He just needed to adjust the data. He paid more attention to the time. At this time, that guy's test should be over. When he entered the team, he would keep him by his side, so that he wouldn't flirt with others. Thinking of this, Chin Mo's mouth turned up slightly, revealing a faint smile. The senior executives in the meeting were stunned. They stared at the faint smile on their CEO's face, wondering what day it was. The CEO seemed to be in a good mood. After another 10 minutes, Chin Mo raised his hand and said calmly, "That's all for today. We'll continue tomorrow." Ah. The senior manager of the planning department hadn't submitted the plan yet, but he was still very happy that the CEO made this decision at the last minute. He immediately said happily, "Yes, yes." Chin Mo was the first to stand up. His legs were perfectly straight in the tailor-made trousers. Coupled with his demonic aura, as soon as he walked out of the conference room, everyone felt the pressure on their heads disappear. They couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief and collapse into their chairs. But, where was the CEO going at this time? Secretary Liang was by Chin Mo's side, holding today's meeting minutes in his hands. "CEO Chin, your dinner starts at 7, isn't it too early for us to go out now? Do you want to take a break first?" "No, let's go to the club." Chin-mo gave the order as soon as he got in the elevator. Their club was right next to the Chin Group building, and it wasn't far. Chin-mo didn't tell Fujio that the meeting was over. He wanted to go over. Sometimes it was good to surprise that guy. Secretary Liang was a bit surprised. Go to the club. It seems that there is an internal signing today. CEO Chin wants to go over and have a look. Chin-mo didn't explain further and just nodded lightly. Secretary Liang paused. Then please wait a moment. The people over there don't know that the president is going. I have to make a call. The contestants who participated in the internal signing this time are all fans of the president. If you go like this, it will cause a sensation. What can a few dozen people do? Chin-mo raised his hand. There was a pure black diamond button on his cuff. Along with his movements, a luxurious light seeped out. His fingertip pressed the elevator button. Secretary Liang had no choice but to put his phone back. It seemed that the CEO had already made up his mind to go there today. Vice Liang was surprised. Among the internal signing participants, the CEO was Chin-mo's CEO suddenly. Suddenly. Secretary Liang's eyes lit up. The little vixen that the CEO met online was one of the internal signed contestants? That was right. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.